Cities grow and cities evolve. Since the arrival of Europeans in the 16th century, outposts of civilization began dotting a very much wild and inhospitable land from one coast to the other. Barrie began as a starting point of a 9-mile portage route linking Lake Simcoe to Georgian Bay. Later, a supply depot for the War of 1812 and a destination of freedom for American slaves in the mid-19th century. It was around this time that commerce and industry was springing up. A tannery, a jail, churches, taverns, a store, and a growing population to serve and be served. Barrie today is an active city of over 150,000 residents and continues to grow. Urban sprawl has transformed into urban layering as developable space grows increasingly scarce. As the economics of supply and demand, coupled with an out-of-control GTA housing market, push Barrie and area home values higher, the prospect of ownership becomes increasingly remote for many, placing strains on a rental stock already undersupplied. One solution to our growing needs for rental housing that conjointly provides ownership opportunity and a buffer against high housing costs is the advent of second suites in Barrie. In 2015, the City of Barrie amended its official plan and zoning bylaw to allow for the creation and lease of self-contained second suites in homes meeting with set standards, though many remain unsure of the steps involved with the qualifying, creating, and registering of a second suite. Welcome to Hitting Home, and with us today is Ryan White, Zoning Administration Officer with the City of Barrie, and Christa Howe, Plans Examiner for the City of Barrie.
Welcome.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
And let's start with the simplest and most important question. What is a second suite?
Absolutely. So essentially a second suite is an additional dwelling unit that usually accompanies a main dwelling unit, which is a single detached, a semi-detached, or a row house. Mm-hmm. It's normally found in a basement or maybe an attic space of an existing house. And also in the City of Barrie, we do permit them in accessory buildings as well. So it could be a garage in the backyard, for example.
Okay, and now the policy surrounding second suites. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially the provincial government mandated that each municipality must permit second suites in single detached, semi-detached, and row house. And from there, municipalities were given the ability to sort of determine what the parameters were around that. Mm-hmm. So in the case of the City of Barrie, there's a few things we look at, which is a minimum dwelling unit size. It's about 370 square feet for a bachelor, about 460 for a one-bedroom, and about 550 or so for a two-bedroom. From there, we also look at a maximum of 2 bedrooms in that second suite. We are also looking at parking, so you need an additional parking space on the property that has the second suite to accompany that second suite. And then in addition to that, the main building has to front on a municipal roadway, and we only permit 1 second suite per titled lot.
So one of the interesting things that I was thinking about when Mike was giving us our intro was we've learned about the history, we've learned about sort of the evolution of the city, and then really anybody who's watching at home, may have heard about second suites over the last couple of years as we've been discussing it, but perhaps people don't really know how it applies to them. That's nice that you've got this policy. I know what my life looks like. I know, whether I'm want to consider aging in place, or my family's growing, or my family's maybe downsizing. But how do I actually put this to use? So we're really thankful that you're here, first of all, to help us explain what it is, and also what the process is. So, and then sort of the third part of the equation a little bit later on in the show, we've got Doug joining us, and he's gonna sort of take us from a practical application, putting that into use as a homeowner. So thanks for being here. I'm glad we now understand what a second suite is. We understand that there are some parameters on what types of properties would qualify and would not qualify. Maybe you can take us through as a plans examiner. I understand also that the sort of the subtext under your business card has been sort of the expediter to make things move along in an efficient manner. Perhaps you could take us through that.
Yeah, so the process has recently been streamlined. We're trying to make it more cost-effective, timely throughout the City of Barrie. We have a fast-track program now that does help homeowners to fast-track their second suite. So the basic process would be coming in, applying with the City of Barrie. You go to Service Barrie, and you can apply for a building permit. You're going to take that building permit out to create your second suite. So you need to provide information to us basically letting us know what you're going to do to create a legal second suite. We recommend that you contact a designer if you don't understand the building process.
No, sorry to interfere, but that building application at that point in time, is that person who's applying given that outline of the dynamics? Like, are they sent away to figure it out on their own, or do they know what the parameters are that they have to work within? And
we do have some information online, so you can go on the City of Barrie website and see a basic application of what we require, information about the size of the dwelling unit, dimensions of your space, window sizes. All of that information is laid out in a format that helps you walk through what you need to provide us in the drawings.
Because not every basement is going to qualify.
Exactly.
You know, you need 2 access and egress points, you need fire separation, there's a lot of things, and that's within
Yeah, so we're going to evaluate the minimum life safety requirements. We want to look at your means of egress, your fire separations, height of your ceilings for egress. We also want to look at some things for comfort as well. So we do recommend you engage in the services of a designer. That is the quickest way to streamline the process. It makes it easier for us to review the suite, as well as they're qualified in what they do, and they're very familiar with second suites now in the City of Barrie.
So we're going to have a graphic along the bottom here. Joe will put the city's website and how to access the information for the show here. But what I'm hearing from you is you're not a designer. And I think that's important for the residents to know, is you're not a designer. You're going to make sure that the application conforms to the standards, et cetera.
Exactly.
But you can't be held accountable basically for making sure that people are going to be thrilled with the outcome of their design.
Exactly. There is a little bit of misconception that an inspector may go out to your house to let you know what you need to do. However, we do require you to propose to us, and we check to make sure that your drawings conform to the minimum building code.
And when we come back, we're going to break here in a second, and what I would like to ask you about, and we'll talk a bit about, is we all know there are grey market, as they're called, suites throughout the city. Should these people be hiding, or should they come forward? We'll talk a little bit about that, about how they can, you know, convert themselves from being in the underground economy to actually having a registered second suite. So we'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to Hitting Home. We're here with Christa Howe and Ryan White from the City of Barrie, and we are talking about second suites. And just before the break, we said we were going to talk about the grey market. There are a lot of units that exist out there. They're not registered. They may not meet with safety standards and fire code. Should these people be hiding out, or should they be coming forward? What are the advantages, if there are any, for them to come forward and register their suites?
Well, sure. At a basic level, any second suite in the City of Barrie is required to be registered with the city. So, I mean, if they are not registered, they are not permitted. We do encourage them to come in. So if the suite was existing prior to May 22nd, 1996, there is a route they can go. They would have to provide proof of that existence prior to that date. But rather than going through the building permit process, they will actually go through the process of registration, where we will have somebody from fire and somebody from property standards come out and do an inspection. If both of those inspections passed, we can actually register the suite from there without going through the building permit process. After that date, they are required to get a building permit. Now they will still be required to register as well. Another distinction with that date, we do have an area in the Georgian College area where second suites are not permitted.
Right.
If the suite existed prior to that May 22nd, 1996 date, and they can provide proof, we will register that suite as existing prior to. However, any suite existing after that date, or any new suite, will not be permitted in that area. The ultimate reason for that is we are encouraging developers to create student housing where there's sort of incentives and cost incentives for these students to actually be living in these accommodations.
So there's two different categories here. There's existing units, or there's existing homes that want to retrofit or renovate to have a second suite, and then there's also the concept of future planning, future growth to incorporate second suites into the secondary plan, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's something that's certainly in the mind of the planning department as we move forward with these secondary plan areas. And we move forward in the building permit process for these, that a lot of these new houses can also accommodate these suites as well.
So elephant in the room, I mean, everybody in the news is talking about it. I want to buy my first home, or I've lived here all my life and I don't want to move and I'd like to stay here, but my requirements have changed. I'm a senior and I'm an empty nester, and I'd like some assistance to cover the cost of living here into my retirement or something like that. So you've got some different people. What are the barriers to entry into this? What are the costs to get a second suite built and registered, for example? Ideas that people are going to be looking at. Christa, this is your alley, I guess.
Yeah, so costs, Doug can obviously speak more to construction costs, but generally a second suite we're thinking is about $30,000 for a one-bedroom suite. That's the general cost that we see. Building permit costs, typically around $1,000 per second suite, but it does vary based on the size, so we charge per meter square. And there are zoning fees as well as registration fees that come into that $1,000 range.
Okay, so before we get to, we got a question coming up, but we have a question from one of our audience members, and Rob asks a question. I have a 1.5-story home on a large lot. It's way more room than I need. There already is a bathroom in the basement along with windows in every room. What do I need to do to check out and conform to create a legal second suite aside from a separate entrance? And obviously we said we do have a website link. Thanks, Rob, for the question, by the way. There are ways for him to contact and get in touch with you, but what kind of information or guidance would you give Rob?
We would suggest looking into a designer. They are very knowledgeable in the requirements, but we do have some information on our webpage. We have a fact sheet with some requirements from the building code. Every suite is very different though, so you need to evaluate that suite on an individual basis. He needs to look at things such as fire separations that need to be completed. Even though he does have windows in all of his rooms, are they the right size? He needs to provide an egress window, so a window that's at least 3.8 square feet, openable area with no dimension less than 15 inches, and a window well that's large enough for egress as well. So there are upgrades that may need to happen to his suite in order to create other than just putting a kitchen in and making it livable. We do want to look at those minimum life safety requirements. So it does need to be evaluated either by a qualified designer or he can try and do some background work himself.
Okay, again, so we're going to have the website information and how to get them there. There was a question though that we wanted to talk about, and this is really the affordable housing side of things. You had a question I know you wanted to talk about, but you work in partnership with the County of Simcoe, and they offer some programs and incentives to help people out. Maybe you can talk on that.
Yeah, so there are a lot of advantages to creating second suites, especially when it comes to affordable housing. So from a municipal point of view, it's less strain on infrastructure. We're using existing infrastructure to help service these suites, which is huge for the municipality. From a homeowner's point of view, perhaps you need some assistance with a mortgage payment, because as we spoke about, housing prices are very high right now. This can help supplement those mortgage payments as well. The County of Simcoe does offer a grant program. It's a forgivable loan, up to $25,000. In effect, they can apply for, a homeowner can apply for this forgivable loan.
At what stage in the game would they make that application?
Yeah,
before
absolutely.
They get the designer in, before they present their application? Or?
So what they want to do is they actually want to open up with the County of Simcoe just to look at eligibility first and foremost, before even coming to the city. Once they've essentially determined that they are eligible for this, they'll go through the city process from there. Now, with this loan, there is the stipulation that the unit being created will be rented at market rate, which is given quarterly by the County of Simcoe.
Right.
As long as they're meeting that loan is forgiven throughout the life of the loan.
That is excellent.
Excellent information, and we could probably talk another half hour because there's still a list of questions. We do have another guest coming in, though, for the final segment of the show, and that's Doug Kruger from Kruger Custom Carpentry. And Doug's going to talk to us about the nuts and bolts of actually putting together your second suite. So we will invite you back at a later date, and I thank both of you for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
We'll talk to Doug.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Hitting Home. We're here with Doug Kruger from Kruger Custom Carpentry, and we're talking about second suites. We just had some wonderful guests from the city of Barrie talking about policy, talking about the permitting process, etc. But this is really where you come into the equation, where the clients call you and say that this is something that they'd like to take up. So why don't you tell us about yourself?
Grew up in the Barrie area. I've been here living in Barrie for just over 10 years now, working, of course, Barrie and surrounding areas. Try to keep within an hour, and there's plenty of work with the way Barrie has been growing. Still getting more renovations than second suites, because I don't think people have in their minds that this is a way that they may need to go in the future because, again, rising costs with real estate. But I am starting to get questions about it, and so the information that Christa and Ryan gave has been very helpful for even myself to now inform homeowners, potential clients, of what they need to do and how they need to plan. I believe the biggest thing that homeowners need to do is plan far in advance.
Yes.
Often they'll save their money and then make a phone call and say, "Can you be in here next week?" Which in the Barrie area, there is a shortage of qualified trades.
Good trades. It's about a
Absolutely.
4 to 6 month wait, is it not, at least?
6 months, and a job that size, as a homeowner, you want to plan about a year ahead
Yeah.
for the paperwork that needs to be done
Yeah,
with the city,
simultaneous to
with the
doing
registrations.
administrative.
Christa talked about designers, which is a very good idea. People think there's initial cost that they don't want to spend on it, but when they go by on the fly and wing it as construction's happening, that
So
money
less
is spent.
expensive more.
That money is spent regardless, with
Yeah,
time
and
lost
maybe more.
and changes. So to start it from the get-go on a great plan that flows throughout the basement or second, third story, like you discussed, that is where they start, and they can have that all in place before they even contact a contractor to start planning when the work is to be done.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm a Barrie homeowner. I've got space in my basement. I've gone through the process, been to the city. They've given me the green light to go ahead. I'm picking up the phone to call you. Now, with respect for the timeline that it's going to take, give me a sense of what's going to happen. You come into my house. What are we looking for a full basement reno? We're going to need, I don't know, kitchen, bath, fire code, prep, and that. Just give us a walkthrough of how long that would take and what's involved. Am I going to be able to stay in my home while that's taking place?
Oh,
give us an
definitely. I've done full home renovations where people have lived there as we picked it apart and redid things and updated it. Half the work is done if they have gotten plans from designers.
Yes.
And it makes my job that much more smoother, and especially for pricing the job. I know exactly what I'm doing instead of having a ballpark.
Yeah.
You can get a concrete price. The timeline, you would want to book a contractor at least 6 months before you want to get the work done inside the house. I do look for those 2 exits. Some people don't realize, landscaping could be involved for safe access
Yeah.
to those 2 entries or exits.
You may even be building that entrance point if it doesn't
Well, I mean,
pre-exist on the house.
if
For
it
some
doesn't
people,
bring
they've
down
got
to
a
the basement.
walkout basement, and other people they don't. So
They have nothing
grading
there, yes.
grading's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the driveway to that entrance, they need a safe walkway. So often there is landscaping needed that they have to take that cost into account
And-
also.
Yeah, and costing is on a project-by-project basis, so you can't just give us you can maybe give us a ballpark. You've got a 600 to 800 square foot basement. You're going to put 1 or 2 bedrooms in. You need to build a bath. You need to build the kitchen area. Assuming everything goes as planned without any structural issues to deal with or anything,
Yeah, I think pricing would start minimum around $45 a square foot. But what people need to realize, there's no ceiling. If you want to spend it, you can spend it.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's so many choices, so many different stages of quality that you can
Well,
put into
yeah.
your
Keeping
second
in
suite.
mind, yeah, if I'm building it for myself, I may take that ceiling higher if you're building it and you want to keep it within business conformity. You know, ideally you're hoping to make money off of this. So spending
Eventually, yeah.
$100,000 is going to take a long time to recuperate when
And
you can
that's,
do it for $25,000 or something.
And that's again why the designers are a great idea, because they can finite that number so you know what you need before you go ahead.
Yeah.
So a couple of things. I mean, I think you nailed something right off the bat. First and foremost, there is the reality of to find a contractor and a reputable contractor, and you don't want the guy who's sitting waiting for the phone to ring. You want somebody who's constantly working. That says a lot about
Yes.
the sort of the reputation and the references of the contractor. So you could be looking 6 months out. At the same time, Christa and Ryan mentioned that there's programs available through the county. Well, those could have a timeline on them. So how early in the process do you need to access that money, and is there an expiry date if you don't get the work done within that certain calendar year? Is that money still available? So those are things that people need to think about. So planning, budgeting, working with finding the right contractor. These are financing, making sure that your finances are in order. Obviously, if you're borrowing money, you need to apply for credit. Maybe, you know, is this something that you're going to qualify for?
And have that buffer for those surprises, because I've often done basements where they were already done or half done, but they were done from previous homeowners without a permit, and they're disasters. So part of the cost and timing is I go in there and completely demo what was there, because it's unsafe and ugly. It doesn't look well, and if you're looking for a very good person to rent, you don't want them to move into an ugly basement, because you're not going to get those top reliable renters.
Yeah.
So ripping the basements apart just before I put them back together is part of a job that people have to look at too. I won't finish an unsafe basement. I won't just throw a kitchen at something that hasn't been done because it wasn't registered before. Because if wiring was done that was unsafe without ESA standards, if plumbing was done unsafe and there's a venting issues and
As a
people-
professional, you're inheriting that. So if you just go and finish it,
yeah,
you're
I
now
can't
liable.
blame it on the guy before.
And
Right.
you'll consult prior to committing to a project. An example being, me as a realtor, I'm seeing more and more people going out looking for a home, and they want that home that has either an existing second suite or even more often the potential for that second suite. And if I pick up the phone, I'd like to be able to call you and say, can you come through and tell them yes or no whether or not this is going to meet those qualifications for them before they proceed.
Yeah, and even if you're getting a new home built, we all know there can be extras added to a new home, and having in mind that in the future, if you want to have a second suite, have the builder put that second entrance in.
More cost
Put,
effective
have,
to do it when it's being built.
often there's only small windows in the basement.
Yeah.
Make sure there's one spot that window where the bedroom's going to be is big
Meets-
enough to meet the requirements. So, and that could be 3 years before you ever put the second suite in, but you're planning
that's-
that far ahead.
that's good proactive
because you're
planning.
saving money, and it looks better.
What are you seeing as trends in the marketplace over the last 5 years, for example? Are you seeing people that are going towards, for example, as opposed to moving, are they renovating?
Much more.
Much more.
More and more. People are staying in place longer.
Yeah,
and
and
that's good for your industry.
I'm talking to clients right now where if they're going to both be retired soon.
Yeah.
They know their monthly income's going down, but they want to stay in the place they are. So
Yes.
instead of downgrading to a smaller place, they can stay there, redo their basement so it's a second suite,
Exactly.
and it'll help them stay put.
So you are seeing that. I mean, Ryan, I think, said
Yes,
he's getting
it's
a dozen
slowly-
calls a day.
yeah, it's
People
slowly coming
inquiring
around.
about it.
It's a relatively new thing. It's only 2015 that this legislation come in, so I expect we're going to see much more of it. And with changes financially, housing prices, qualification, and that, it's going to encourage more and more of this. And aging in place is becoming more and more of a popular thing with seniors too.
So let me look at this. Do you also deal with people who are investors? They want to buy a rental property, or they're young people starting out and maybe they're looking at, you know, what home do I want for the future? What kind of information can you give them about, you know, you're in the market, you want to buy, what to look for in terms of this particular topic, having a second suite? What are they looking for?
Yeah, there's a few more things than we could cover right now, but I know for selling homes,
We got 2 minutes. so.
people are looking for that potential, and it comes down to those entrances, exits, a safe way to get to the basement.
Yeah.
I know homes sell much quicker when they have that potential. Even if there isn't a second suite, if they have the potential, they go faster on the market. It's
Some of the other things.
It's hard to say, but I know when you sell my own home a year and a half ago, 90% of the people were looking for that basement potential for a second suite because I had a walkout, but my home didn't accommodate for the size of it.
A minimal
I'm selling my
ceiling
house
height.
right now. I had the exact same thing. I
Yeah.
love your house. It doesn't have access to a basement.
Minimal ceiling height, and then either existing or ability to put separate metering for heat and hydro is something as well. And you can retrofit for that, obviously, but
Absolutely, Doug. We're gonna have some information, just like we had information for the city of Barrie on there, where they can get information. We'll have some information of how you can people can get a hold of someone such as yourself. I'm sure you can provide information to people. We do have to wrap up. We're out of time for the show. We want to thank first and foremost our guests for joining us today. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about. I also want to thank Rob for sending in that question, and we definitely, as said, Rob will follow up with you. If you have any more questions, you know how to get a hold of us as well. So thanks for that. For people who do have questions going forward or like to discuss items or give us ideas that we could talk about on the show and bring guests in, we have an email hittinghome@gmail.com. And I'm sure we could certainly talk. I would love to have you back, actually, to see how, with the uptake of second suites, as they're getting a dozen calls a day, maybe how your business has changed and sort of how we see things going on in the next year or so.
Glad to come back.
But yeah, love to have you again. Thank you very much,
Thank
Doug.
you.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week.